Seems like no one likes the race they're given, huh? I just saw that female Indian named Sachin Littlefeather, who famously accepted the Oscar for Marlon Brando when he won for The Godfather, was lying about her heritage the whole time. Yeah, she just died and everyone was mourning her and remembering her, blah blah blah. And her sisters came out and said that her roots were actually Mexican and had absolutely no links to any tribe at all. Sachin Littlefeather was born Marie Louise Cruz and would tell a story of her father being a drunk and how she overcame, blah blah blah. And the sisters revealed that was all a lie as well, that the grandfather was actually the drunk. And, Sachin or Marie just applied the story to her own father to give herself a better origin story. Shit, man, being Mexican is great. I mean, it sounds cool to be an Indian with the nicknames and the teepees, but we have tacos and empanadas. And also, have you seen those dudes riding horses in the living room while cumbia music is playing and the horse is doing the dance? I love that shit. Speaking of empanadas, pumpkin is the best. And not because it's pumpkin spice season, they've just always been my favorite since I was a kid. When I was super little and just starting school, when we would take like those tax state administered tests, back then I would always put that I was white as my race. And that's just because I was a stupid little kid. I straight up didn't even know about race. I saw my skin and I was like, oh, white, okay, I'll put white. Damn, I'd get all A's and shit too. That could have been a part of it, but I guess also I was a pretty good student up until junior high. All because of the divorce, boo hoo hoo. Dude, I vividly remember this one time in 4th grade. Or was it 2nd grade? Nah, I don't even vividly remember it anymore. No, it was 4th grade. I had a teacher named Miss Rankin, right? And she was, if I look back at her now, just a skinny, pretty white woman. Your stereotypical teacher, how they looked back in movies and TV shows, back way back when. Not now where they dress up with big old anime titties and fucking raccoon tails and shit. And we had a test maybe the day I'm remembering, and later in the day after the test we were graded, and she said whoever got a perfect 100 on the test would get a kiss on the cheek. So I remember getting 100, because I was a good student, along with some other guys and girls. And she had this bright red lipstick and put it on and gave us all each a big old kiss on the cheek, like where the lipstick stayed. And as a kid, I remember that being pretty harmless, but now looking at it as an adult and the way the public is thinking now, I'm like, what the fuck was all that back when, That could have been seen as like sexual harassment, or I even think of how unsanitary that is to kiss all these 2nd grade little germ-filled kids on the cheek, But I'm cool because I still got my kiss, baby, yeah. I remember seeing Miss Rankin when I was in high school later on in life, and dude, I don't know if it was like those hormones, being in teen angst in my peak, but damn, she was fine. I'm like, hey, that chick kissed me right there, yeah. But yeah, that Mexican chick pretending to be Indian. That's funny that they say John Wayne was being held back wanting to fuck her up when she did that. I bet if she said she was actually Mexican, he would still want to beat her ass, maybe even more. He's like, I want to shake her hand. Let me shake her hand. I just want to shake her hand. That reminds me of that Rachel Dolezal chick who was like white pretending to be black. And she kind of got away with it for a while, right? That was pretty cool until like all of that came out at the peak of her activism. And I mean, it was kind of our faults. I mean, look at her. That shit was way more obvious than a Mexican pretending to be an Indian, What do I know? Huh? Am I right? I was trying to think of other stuff to talk about, and I was reminded about a time years ago when I was working at another grocery store. I worked pretty early, right? I would go into work pretty early, and there was an ambulance there before the store was open. So the overnight manager, his name's Jesse, Who, side note, he looked like Scar from The Lion King, right? He was a pretty cool guy, even though he looked like Scar from The Lion King. So there was an ambulance leaving, and Jesse's there, and I'm like, hey, what's up with the ambulance? And he's like, oh man, I forgot to check the restrooms before the store closed. So in the middle of the night, when I went to go take a piss, there was some homeless looking dude just hanging off of one of the stall doors with a belt around his neck, like he just like hung himself. And he was like, oh fuck, this dude's dead, like let me call an ambulance. And I guess like while he was in the restroom calling the ambulance on the phone with the dispatcher, the guy hanging there just like woke up with like a big gasp of air, and Jesse freaked out and just helped like untie that dude from his belt and just called the ambulance waiting around for it, you know. I was like, god damn. I think the worst I've ever been a part of, it that same store, it was getting pretty close to closing time, and I was like by the dairy department, and some dude just started cussing out another dude there by the cheese, and just like talking shit and instigating him, you know, trying to get him to fight. And that other dude just started fighting him, and that other dude was beating the shit out of that first guy. And I go over there and I'm like, hey, y'all take this outside. And the second guy just got up and like walked out. And the first dude was like looking at me like, aren't you gonna call like the police or something? And I just held up my hands in that whole like, I don't know, thing with my shoulders, and I just went back to my shift, you know. But yeah, that's pretty mild compared to finding a almost dead person. Uh, I did suck a girl's tits once in a deli cooler. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I had to put a hairnet on because she was making rotisserie chickens, and we just like both went into the cooler where they have like the chickens ready to rotisserie, and she just whipped out her tits and I started sucking on them. Like I was hoping milk would come out like in the movies, you know, but it was still a top 10 moment. Speaking of tits, Carly Simon is in the news about paying tribute to her two sisters that died of cancer a day apart. And I'm not here to talk about that because that is touching. But if you don't jam out to Carly Simon, dude, you're missing out. Like, she wrote like you're so vain, or you belong to me, your anticipation, touched by the sun. Remember Mockingbird? Yeah, she wrote that with her husband. That shit goes hard. You gotta hear that with her husband. I forget his name. James Taylor? Yeah, I think so. Carly Simon featuring James Taylor, Mockingbird. That shit goes hard. Hits after hits after hits. And I forget what, like, musically what her voice type is, but it's like a deep woman voice, you know? Not like a high pitch, whatever, like a, you know, I don't know if it's a tenor or a soprano. I don't know the wording to it, but she has like a deep voice. But yeah, if you look up like pics of her from the 80s or whenever she was like in her true prime, I guess she would wear, you know, shirts without bras like most women back then did. And her tits were always like up, like real perky, like she was wearing some fancy push-up bra, but you know, she wasn't. And I don't know if it's the women were built differently back then with the naturally perky boobs, or Earth's gravity was just different and titties didn't sag all rowdy. Because yeah, I remember that the titties on that girl in the cooler kind of sagged a bit, but I wasn't very picky at the moment. Finally, I read in the news too about the trouble from in that classroom of the teachers wearing that like Scream Halloween mask and scaring the kids. And man, I remember when I was a freshman in high school, they turned on the TV and we were literally watching 9/11 happen. Yeah, you know, the Twin Towers being hit by airplanes. So you want to tell me that kids get scared with a mask, and I literally watched the whole world change in front of my eyes. I swear though, when that was on and the teachers were crying and scared and shit, I remember thinking, and I was a freshman, but I was still just thinking, wait, that's happening all the way in New York, and we're in Texas. Why does that matter? Was I wrong? But yeah, about 9/11. Not recently, maybe like years back when that documentary Loose Change came out, and I watched it late at night, and man, dude, I felt like I knew way too much, like all this conspiracy information in my head. And like I just watched it and I was like, oh my God, the government's watching me. They know I saw that. I know everything. I know too much. So don't tell me your kids are scared if they haven't lived through watching 9/11 happen. And yeah, it's pretty much, another episode. If you don't like your own race and you want to change it, nowadays, I guess that's cool. You can kind of just declare anything you want to be, So no big deal. Pick whatever race you want. The whole human race is just shit. So whatever. And yeah, about titties. Yeah, they might not be perky anymore, saggy, but don't discriminate. All titties are good titties. So have fun with that. And next time you have time to go on Spotify, listen to, or Apple, I'm sorry. Anywhere you stream your music, if you're listening to my podcast, hey, you can listen to Carly Simon. And yeah, she goes fucking hard. Touched by the Sun. Oh, you'll cry hearing Touched by the Sun. But yeah, take care and, have a great day.